Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Persian and the Cowboy podcast. Today we are talking about the Chinese currency war that is happening right now and the question of, is the United States dollar going to remain as the global currency for the future coming up now? So, Mr. Persian, what do you got on this?
Yeah, man. So this is another situation, Mr. Cowboy. China is trying to dislodge the United States as the number one superpower in the world. China is doing everything they can to become number one. They are the next superpower in line. They're the next big dog, and they are surging in different areas. And this is just an example. So there's a couple different things with this, okay? Here's the number one. So the Chinese currency is the yuan. We all know this. And they want the yuan to become the number one currency in the world in terms of trading and in terms of like doing business, because the dollar has been the king for the longest time. They want to overthrow the dollar because they want to insert their power and their global dominance. So one of the things that was very interesting to me was the BRICS meeting. Okay, BRICS. So it was a meeting between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They all want to basically form their own currency now to dislodge the dollar. Let me ask you a question. Why is India an ally of the United States? Why are they playing both sides? I mean, all countries play both sides. They all sleep with each other. But it's like, why are they wanting to get involved with this? China is also I wouldn't say like an adversary, but they're kind of an adversary for India. But why is India and China, they're not exactly best friends, they're meeting together? So that's a concern for me that the two biggest superpowers in the world, which America's number one, but the two underneath, Russia and China, are trying to create a new currency together. And alongside Brazil, which is not really a threat, India, which is a rising power to be maybe in a couple hundred years, and also South Africa are now wanting to form a currency. That's a little concerning to me that they're trying to do that, okay? But the one thing going back to China is this. China wants the American dollar to fail. They want to basically become the pro-dominant power in the world. They want to establish their reign over the world. They want to expand their influence via business, via everything. And now the dollar has fallen off in Russia, and now due to all the sanctions in Russia and all these other countries, the countries are being sanctioned by the U.S., they now want the Chinese yuan in their country, and they want to do business with that currency. They want to do that, and they want to overthrow the dollar. So these are all red flags if you're the United States of America. Just in this past month, we had the BRICS meeting between these five countries. Then you had China making peace between Iran and Saudi Arabia, two enemies that hate each other in the Middle East, who are having a Cold War in the Middle East in various countries and fighting each other in various countries through proxy groups, okay? And then now you have China giving out loans to various countries and building infrastructure in Africa and South America and Central America and parts of Europe. And in exchange, if the countries, these second and third world countries, can't pay back their loans, then China basically takes over that piece of land for military, business, and influence purposes. So China is very smart with this. They are taking over the game. They are laying the footprint and the foundation for their rise to power, and it's working. The Biden administration doesn't seem to be very shook by this whole thing with the dollar, because as you know, Joe Biden loves China. He has business interests with China with his son Hunter Biden. They've made tons of millions of dollars through entities within China. So this is a big kind of a eyebrow-raising moment that our own president, our own administration here in the United States, the Biden administration, doesn't feel like this is a threat, and they're brushing this off. This is an economic declaration of war when you want to dislodge your enemy's currency from the world stage.
Yes, I don't really see it as that big of a deal. And I kind of go back to, what is the point of being the global currency? Like, what are the advantages of that right there, right? So every exchange, every economic trade between, let's say India and China, or, France and South Africa, or something like that. What they end up doing is they convert the euro into United States dollars, and then that United States dollars then gets converted into the South African currency as well. So there's an extra step in there. And it's advantageous for the bankers that hold on to all of the cash that they're loaning out for these exchanges, to have that be the middleman right there because they get a little cut every single time you transfer it over. So that's the advantage to being the global currency. Now, I see that as an advantage for the elites, the bankers of the world.
The globalists.
The people that have foreign investments over there, the Joe Bidens that have money in China.
Oh, yeah.
And let's say you own some manufacturing offshore or something like that. It's advantageous to only be able to work in the United States dollars because you can just use that everywhere you go. You don't have to convert around quite as much. Now, for the everyday American, though, I don't see this as something critical for them. Like, what's the point of how does it affect me if India and China are no longer trading in the United States dollars and they're just using their own currency now?
Right.
That doesn't really affect my life or my bottom line at all.
Exactly.
It just has to do with the standing of the United States government right there. And then I would say that people are going away from the dollar not because China's yuan is so strong, because it's one of the sketchiest currencies that's out there.
Yeah.
I think that people are going away from the United States dollar because the United States dollar is collapsing because we have rapid inflation happening right now.
We do have rapid inflation.
Our economy is all over the place, and everyone's scared of Congress and Joe Biden printing more and more money.
Keep printing. There are consequences to this.
Yeah, a bigger and bigger deficit so that we are not able to maintain a constant value of the United States dollar. There's so much corruption involved in the Federal Reserve and just endless printing right now. We're seeing inflation go up. We're seeing interest rates go up. Everything's in flux right now. So why would you want your money in just sitting there in dollars right now? It's worthless. It's losing its value like crazy. So I think that the rest of the world is seeing what the United States is doing to our own currency, and they're wisely getting away from the dollar because the dollar is going to be so weak. And one thing I want to add, the United States is a world superpower not because the dollar is the global currency. The United States is a superpower, and therefore our currency becomes the world currency.
Right.
It's our strength in our economy that allows us to prosper so much that the rest of the world wants in on our action, and so therefore they got to trade on our terms because of that. We are strong economically not because the dollar is strong. We are strong economically despite how weak the dollar actually is.
Here's the thing. I think everything that you said is 100% accurate. It's true. But the problem is China is literally starting to come in at all different angles. They're knocking on the door. America has become weaker financially, has become weaker as a superpower. We have social problems here. We have economic issues. Our national deficit is what, 32, almost 33 trillion? Has it passed 33 trillion?
I can't look at it.
Why aren't we talking about this like in the media? Because the media doesn't want to talk about it because they're ran by the global elites who have access to this kind of shit. We cannot sustain this anymore, folks. We keep printing more and more and more and more. Eventually the chickens are going to come to roost very soon, and then we'll be really fucked. So at the end of the day, China sees this, that America's future is in despair. They say, hey, we're going to take over a lot of different things around the world because these guys can't even wipe their ass anymore because their money's going to be worth nothing. So them doing this and, forming alliances with various countries who are our enemies and adversaries and buying up real estate in the United States, buying up farmland, buying up land, and then trying to dislodge the American dollar and persuade countries to start pushing the yuan and all this. These are all red flags. I am not okay with this. It's a declaration of war on another front. It's a currency war. We have an economic, we have a currency war, and we have a soon to be a military conflict on the rise with China. And we are not opening our eyes to this. We can't even smell the coffee because we're too worried about what genders we can create, what fucking who identifies as what. We're more worried about the kind of drag queens coming into schools and reading books to kids, and it looks creepy. Like, we have to get back to basics. Our empire is collapsing within us, under our noses, and China's making a lot of moves. So here's what I would do. Here's another thing. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of our key allies in the Middle East region. During the first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait and had succeeded, Saudi Arabia became very scared. The House of Saud, the crown princes, and the kingdom folks, they all wanted to bounce from Saudi Arabia. They were scared because Saddam wanted to invade Saudi Arabia next. So the U.S. got its allies together with 500,000 total troops. They decided to push Saddam out of Kuwait and flush him back to Iraq, and they liberated Kuwait and helped Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has a lot of investments in the United States and different companies. They have a lot of stocks. They have a very rich country.
The oil money,
the kingdom, it's the oil money. Who found them the oil in the first place? Did they do it on their own? No. I don't think so. It was the West, the United States, and Europe that helped them grow their oil industry for our own interest too. It wasn't because we cared about Saudi. We don't give a fuck about Saudi Arabia. It was because we see them as an ally of convenience. And now Saudi Arabia, flash forward to 2023, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, who's like the president and prime minister and everything over there. He literally said, we need to push away from the United States and align with China. What? Like, this is a big concern. Their country has so many investments. India, Narendra Modi, this guy was all about America. We have a lot of folks from India who are here in the United States who are working high-tech jobs that Americans can't fathom because they're not educated enough to work these jobs. So we have a lot of people from India in the United States and vice versa. We outsource there. Modi and his government and Xi and China's government are sitting at the table and they're trying to heal their relationship. They've had some struggles. They're not really friends. They're not really adversaries. They are adversaries, but they're also trying to dabble with each other. Countries do this. They sleep with each other. They fuck each other. And then now you have Brazil, who's also doing the same thing with China. Then you have Iran that basically sold its gas cheaply to China, and China's taking over Iran because they want access to the Middle East, the Persian Gulf, and to the oil and natural gas. And Iran is basically getting fucked by American sanctions, which is great. I support the sanctions on Iran's government, but it's the government that's not being impacted. It's the people, the average people like you and I, who are getting fucked over there, who can't even get a piece of bread. So these are all under the Biden administration. All these enemies and adversaries, and some of our friends are basically sleeping with their enemies right now. They're like, we're gonna need. So this is what I would do. To China, we got to get the sanctions back on China. The tariffs, the Trump era tariffs, times 10 on Chinese goods. We have to force these companies, these Apples, these Googles, all these companies that do business in China that are manufacturing their product, bring this shit back to America now. We need to have a president in the future who's going to force these companies to bring all manufacturing back to America, or we're going to slap you with a 60 to 70% corporate tax rate. We're going to fuck you in the ass with taxes, number one. Number two, we need to ban these student visas from these countries, and the visas and the green cards, the people that are trying to come here, ban it. You want to play games against the United States? Ban all these folks from coming here as a penalty. Put tariffs on all these goods coming from these countries. Slap sanctions on them. India. We do a lot of business with India. I thought India were our friends. What the fuck is this? We have a lot of H-1B candidates who are working here, who are working in high-tech jobs, and now India is doing this on the side. They're trying to work with China. We need to start training the American worker to get smart, to get educated, to get highly sophisticated with high-tech jobs, and give the job to the American citizen, American worker. Get rid of the H-1B visa program. Get rid of this stuff from India. Just cut it for now as a penalty for the situation with China. Just send a message to them. If you're going to fuck with the United States, we're going to fuck you right back in the ass. So we're going to cut this program too. Here's the other thing. One last thing. I'll let you go, cowboy. I'm on a roll right now. And then the same thing. We should do a travel ban from these countries. If you're going to fuck with us with our currency, you're going to fuck with us economically, we have to put a travel ban restriction. We have to do these kind of things. This is incorrect. I don't like it. This is too much. And then with regard to China, we have to get serious with China. We have to ban Chinese nationals from China buying land in the United States, real estate land and farmland and buildings and whatever the fuck, because we cannot let them take over property in the United States. This is an invasion of real estate. We have to put a ban on this. You have to live in America. You have to be an American citizen to buy property. Ban that from happening. Ban these foreign entities from buying land here, and they don't even live here. They live overseas. So we need to stop doing that because we're hurting ourselves. And the final thing, Cowboy, and I'll let you take over, is that we have to seize these properties from these foreign entities who have property here. We have to take it back through some sort of act, like a Patriot Act ×2. Take it back, give it back to the United States. We need to take it back because we are at future war with these people. We're already having struggles with these countries. Take it back.
Yeah,
Take it back. What are they going to do? They have passed laws. You can't even get a home in China if you're an American citizen. Canada, of all countries, has passed a law against having foreign entities buy real estate in their country. You have to live in the house in order to buy a property. You can't just let it remain vacant like we do here in the United States. We have to end this shit now. We are being attacked economically through monetary funds and on all fronts. This is not good. It's not good.
All right.
I rest my case.
A lot to unpack there.
The Cowboy's taking a lot of notes, dude. I just rambled and I went on, dude. I apologize. You get me started on this. It's a passionate subject. I don't like
No, it's okay. So I think let's go back to China originally right there. And so with I think China's making these moves, and I agree with you that they're trying to make moves. They're getting this.
They become very hostile.
But I think it's more out of desperation than it is out of anything else, because China is seeing the writing on the wall with what's going down with Russia and Ukraine right now. Because China wants to invade Taiwan. They want that land. They want to send their troops in, and they're using the Ukraine war as a model for how the world's going to react if China does invade Taiwan. And they see the sanctions that are being slapped on Russia right now, and they go, oh crap, I don't think we could survive that. And China knows they can't survive that. So that's why they're starting to do this outreach to figure out who I can make friends with that'll be on my side, and positioning their pieces so that once they do invade Taiwan, they're still going to have trading partners. They're still going to have access to oil.
They're smart.
They're still going to have, their businesses and whatnot invested in foreign affairs. And so that's why they're doing all this stuff. But the thing that doesn't really concern me too much about it is all these people that they're allying with right now are natural enemies of each other. I mean, Iran and Saudi Arabia, those guys are sworn enemies. They've got this peace agreement right now, but I mean, if shit goes down and shit starts breaking out, I think Saudi Arabia is going to crawl back to the United States really quick and say, hey, sorry, can you help us out here? Because
don't go fuck yourself.
Well, and that's something is Iran has a strong military that has been fighting for decades now. Saudi Arabia has a modern military that has some fancy equipment that money can buy.
Well, it's from us too.
Yeah, but they don't have the actual real world experience. Their military's small, and they're not training with it as much as Iran is. Iran in a straight up fight with Saudi Arabia, I think Iran takes that cake. You know,
I think it'd be very devastating, but in the end, the United States would have to get involved and protect Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. If the United States does not get involved, then Iran.
It's going to be devastating. The whole region is going to be in a full scale war if that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And if that does happen, China is screwed because that's where they get oil from. They cannot survive without that Persian Gulf staying open and remaining from right there. If the United States wants to defeat China, all we need to do is plug up the Persian Gulf somewhere along the trade process. Don't let anything come out of there, and then China dries up in a couple of months. You know, they don't have the reserves. They don't have the oil from themselves right there. Go ahead.
Well, if that were to happen, they get oil from Russia because Russia has a lot of oil and they're desperate and they'll sell to China. But here's a real quick point, and then I'll let you get to the point. So here's my thing. Here's my warning to all these countries. The United States, this whole thing is China moving the chess pieces. China is actually doing a good job in doing so. They're very smart. They're very calculated. You hit a really good point earlier. You said they're trying to form alliances for trade partners because eventually in the next 18 to 24 months, China will invade Taiwan. They are upset about this. It's their nationalistic right, as they say, which is incorrect, but that's what they want to do. And they're going to succeed in that. But it's going to come with a heavy economic cost, sanctions that you've never seen before. So they want to have allies like Russia, like Iran, Saudi Arabia, India, Brazil, South Africa, some random countries thrown in the mix too, because they know that America is going to come and slap them with a bunch of different shit. And I think that in the end, China is making all these moves so that they can expand their global power, their influence throughout different regions of the world. And their deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia was so that they can get full access to the Persian Gulf, to the natural gas and oil reserves from two oil-rich countries, especially Saudi Arabia. And they want to control that part of the region. They understand what's going on, and they see what America did and the mistakes they made. They don't want to make the same mistakes. So they're trying to appease both sides, and it's working. Saudi Arabia literally has turned on the United States. They have said, we don't need America anymore. We don't need America for this. We don't need America for that. But they were the longest ally of the United States, militarily and economically. And they're still friends behind closed doors. But if I'm the United States, the next president, I slap the most immense tariffs and sanctions on all these countries. I limit the travel from people coming to this country.
Yeah.
I limit the H-1Bs. I cancel the green cards. I go after them hard economically to be like, if you're going to fuck with the United States, who's been that power, who's helped your countries grow, I'm going to fuck you hard.
Well, and that's so going back to that, you said that Saudi Arabia is now saying, oh, we don't need the United States. We can just buddy up with China. They're going to buy all our oil. We're going to get a ton of money coming in from them. But I would flip that around and say the United States does not really need Saudi Arabia.
No.
We don't need anyone else in the world. We import far less than most other nations right there. We are an exporter of food, and we also have the ability to become energy neutral. If we open up the shale fields and start building the pipelines,
we have our own stuff.
We can just get by no problem. We were a net energy exporter under Trump.
Yeah.
And when we had
And
the
we need to get
pipelines
that
open
back.
and the oil flowing. And I think it's extremely hypocritical of our government to say, we're going to ban all the oil production in the United States and stop it from expanding, but yet we're still going to import all this other oil from someone else. So we're going to let another country do the dirty business and mine the oil for us.
Right.
We're just going to buy it and then bring it over here. And it's like, what the hell? Why don't we just
We have our own stuff.
Yeah, exactly. If we want to stop using oil and stop oil production, then we need to stop using oil. But we're never going to do that.
We're not going to do that because
would
there's
crush our
too much at
economy.
stake. But
So my point, though, is that the United States does not need the rest of the world. The rest of the world needs the United States.
Yes, exactly.
And
110%.
And that is where things are going to get tricky for Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia has a lot of eyes looking at them. They got a lot of wealth. They got a lot of oil fields right there.
Yeah.
And Iran's staring at that, and they're going to start brushing shoulders in the Persian Gulf again. I don't think China can create the level of peace and security that they need from it, because China is a long way away. They don't have the navy that the United States does. And how can they secure their pipelines? You say that they're going to get oil from Russia if the Persian Gulf gets shut down, but they don't have pipelines. They don't have transport. There's no like major freeway systems that connect China and Russia. And one last thing I would like to say is China and Russia, India, they're all natural enemies of each other. India and China were having skirmishes in the Himalayas
last year.
As recently as 2021.
Yeah.
They're fighting over territory already. They are not natural allies or
They're frenemies.
yeah, but they are merchants of opportunity. They see money, dollar signs that can happen, and so that's why they will have, as Russia would say, a strategic partnership. And I think that is where things are going, because they're so culturally different from each other. You look at America and our allies, our major allies, the United Kingdom, France, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. These are all cultures that have accepted Western practices of democracy and our republic systems that we have together. And we are all united by those common values. But if you look at the BRICS agreement, all these countries are completely different from each other, have completely different values, different levels of totalitarianism to democracy and republics. It's kind of all over the place, and they are just set up strategically for that. So the BRICS agreement, though, was originally the BRIC agreement, and that was Brazil, Russia, India, China.
And then they added South Africa.
Added South Africa in 2010. And this is not a military alliance. This is a strategic.
It's strategic.
It's a strategic agreement for trade, and they're cutting the dollar out of it. So they're agreeing with each other to trade via their own currencies, so they don't have to do the extra step and putting the dollar in between everything and having to go get more US dollars from there
Yeah.
and trade back and forth. So they're basically just cutting out the middleman. And this is not a military alliance. These guys are not friends. They are not, there's nothing that's holding them to go to war if the other one goes to war, you know?
Well, if something happened where the United States and China went into a military conflict with one another, and Brazil and South Africa decided to help China, the United States military would crush Brazil and South Africa in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It would be over for them.
Yeah.
Now, you know, there's the other thing is going back to a few of your points earlier with regard to Saudi Arabia, you know, if I was Saudi Arabia, I'd be very careful pissing off the United States because, you know, we shouldn't lend our hand to them again if they come back saying, oh, we need you guys, because they're a very key ally for us in the Middle East region in terms of the conflict future with Iran, because we have Arab allies that we're very strong with, including Saudi Arabia, that do not like Iran, that do not like the Iranian regime, that want the Iranian regime to collapse, and they are afraid of the Islamic Republic because the Islamic Republic is doing some nefarious shit in these different countries in the Middle East and are causing issues for these countries. But in the end, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work that way. But as a warning to these countries, and I'm going to say it again, I would slap sanctions on all these countries who are doing business with China and who are partnering up and becoming buddy-buddy with China.
Yeah.
I would slap sanctions. I would freeze their assets here. We would raise tariffs, start banning student visas, green cards from these different countries who are coming here, and do some sort of travel ban to show them, hey, we're not fucking around. If you're going to fuck with us this way, we're going to fuck you right back. And I know it's a tit for tat thing, but we're living in a very hostile world, and we're on the verge of the Third World War has already started, but officially, like these things are all red flags. China is laying down the pieces one by one, over here, over there, over here, over there. And this administration, the Biden administration, has weakened us foreign policy-wise on different fronts, especially when it comes to relations with China. They're very cozied up with China, and that's the biggest red flag of all.
Yeah, and I see this as more of, this is where you and I disagree. I see this more of acts of desperation from China. They're trying to get everything put together, and if they don't secure all of these things, then they're screwed. There's nothing they can do. They need the trade partners. They need the oil supply. They need the food supply to come in.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's another big player in this whole situation that's keeping a low profile, but has a huge population that can come in and really F with China's shipping lanes from the Persian Gulf to mainland China. That's Indonesia. Indonesia is not a part of BRICS. They're not really involved too much with the United States, but they have, what is it, the fourth largest population in the world?
Is it like 180 million, 200 million people? Maybe
they have
more.
a ton of people on that island change.
But the thing is, like, then that's a good point that you mentioned because we have allies in that part of the region. We have Malaysia, we have Indonesia, we have the Philippines, but...
And each one of them is capable of shutting down the Chinese supply lines. So China has done step one. They've secured the Persian Gulf, but now they need to secure every little step.
And they're going to do it.
From there to, you know.
They'll call upon those countries and have a meeting and work things out because they're that smart. I'm worried about China because they're very intelligent. They're making moves, and we as an empire, we as our leadership, we're very stupid. Mm-hmm. We are ran by stupid people. They're not seeing this. First of all, let me ask you a question. Why do Chinese entities who do not have civilians based here in terms of the whole land thing, the real estate, why are Chinese entities buying farmland in the United States? And why have we allowed that?
Because it's the most valuable piece of farmland in the entire world. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes America so strong, is the breadbasket of the world is right there in the Mississippi Basin. And so if you're a foreign entity, the best way to do that is to secure some of that for themselves. Yeah. So, and the dollar is absolute terrible. So why would you, if you got a bunch of cash sitting around, they don't trust yuan because the Chinese government can seize all your money and your assets at any given time, right? Yeah. So they have to get their large amounts of money outside of China. So they do that by buying things up in the United States and other parts of the world that they can. And the dollar is not worth holding on to. So then you got to do something with it. And the most secure thing we have right now is land holdings. And so that's why they're doing it.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it again. We don't have the same opportunities as Americans to buy property overseas. There are many laws, there are many pieces of legislation that stop us from doing it. I say it's time that we as a country, we as a government, the next president pass legislation that if you want to buy land in the United States or real estate, you must be a citizen of this country and you must live in this country. You cannot live overseas and buy land. And if you're a citizen, an American citizen who wants to buy land, but if you live overseas, you want to buy land here, you have to live here. You can't just do that.
Yeah.
To foreign entities who are our enemies that own land in the United States, and we know about this, whether it's real estate, buildings, land, whatever, they need to be seized by the U.S. federal government as an act of patriotism, and it's an act of war that these countries are doing this because they're buying up real estate in the United States right under our noses, and we should have laws passed just like Canada.
Mm-hmm. That'll take a declaration of war first, but and I think that points to the incompetence of Congress because that should be just a slam dunk.
Well, these people are stupid. People who run Congress on both sides, they're dumb people. They're ran by corporations. They're bought by lobbies. They're working for their own pocket. They're not working for you and I.
Yeah, exactly. But
I one or two people that are.
I wouldn't say they're dumb. I think they know exactly what they're doing with that. But I think that should be the simplest, shortest, easiest bill to pass through. Right?
They could pass it right now.
Yeah, they could.
They could get together.
But they're going to have it be 700 pages long, full of other things that are going to slid underneath the table. Like, it's
I
just
would just
insane.
say, look, I'm going to do an executive order if I'm president. I want this done now, and I'm going to lock you in the Congress halls until you pass it. And if you want to use the bathroom, piss or shit on the floor. I want us to pass. This is an American right. This is an act of patriotism. We have our enemies under our noses buying shit in our own country.
Yeah. So there's one other point I want to
make the point.
Bring
Cowboy.
up on.
I love it. Make a
point.
And
that is that Mexican labor is now cheaper and more skilled than Chinese labor is. Mm-hmm. And so the United States has everything they want right here because we can just have them be our manufacturing basis and go from there if we can figure out the whole cartel situation down there. But I think that's the other reason why China needs to make moves now, and they need to do them fast, is because they know the only thing that's ever made them money is really, really cheap manufacturing labor there. Their entire economy is based upon cheap labor in China. And the prices are going up because their population is aging. They don't have the young people anymore. These older, more skilled
And they're not going to
workers-
do manufacturing. They're more high-tech people now.
Well, they are Chinese, as I know it, the Chinese...
The newer generation is what I mean.
Well, the Chinese economy is based upon assembly of parts. They're not the ones that are making the like super high tech semiconductors and whatnot, but they will buy the stuff and assemble it into the right configuration, and then they can ship it off from there. So it's not necessarily the high tech, complicated equipment and machinery that's being built. That stuff's more coming out of Taiwan. The good semiconductors are coming out of Taiwan. So mainland China is having a crisis of their demographics. They're aging faster than anyone else. And the one-child policy has screwed them over royally. So they're not going to have another population that's young enough to support the older population. And what happens when everyone retires and there's only, half as many people to take care of all the old people?
That's a good point.
They gotta find food for them, and they only have half as many people to make it. So they either got to import it or automate it in some way or something. But all of that requires help from other nations, and they have to reach out to nations that are naturally and historically their enemies.
Yeah.
And so good luck with that. So I think the only thing the United States has to do to defeat China is just go home. We can manufacture our own oil, and then just let the world go back to being enemies again.
So here's the deal.
One last thing.
Yeah.
So the United States has created another Pax Romana. That was the Roman peace that came during the height of the Roman Empire, where they had conquered the entire world, and there were only little skirmishes at the edge of the empire that were going on. The United States has, after World War II, conquered the world's navies, and we guaranteed free and open trade for everyone in the world. Yeah, we defended the sea lanes. That's why there's only been like 1 or 2 cases of piracy in the last 100 years. It's because the United States is guaranteed free passage for everyone to
And they
trade.
protect it, for sure.
And we did that because we wanted to bribe all the rest of the world to be on our side during the Cold War against the Soviet Union. So they're like, oh, we get all this free trade and we can have access. All of a sudden, these countries have access to markets that they've never had before. And another thing with Saudi Arabia, they import all their food.
Yeah.
You know, they shut down those trade lanes, then Saudi Arabia is screwed for a different reason,
They're
you know?
fucked.
And so when the Cold War ended, the United States has kept this up, and we've let the world free trade all they want, and we haven't taken a cut of it. We have not been taking any money, like, and that's what historically has happened during like the Silk Road days. If you're going through someone's nation, you had to give a tax to go through and trade with it. So we were letting them do this free of charge for everything. And that's just what the world expects to happen now. But if the United States goes home and stops defending those sea lanes, all of a sudden other countries get ideas of like, you know, there's this huge ship going through right here with a bunch of stuff that we could take on it. And that's when the competition starts going again. And that's when you're going to start seeing other nations build up their own navies, because now all of a sudden you got to protect your cargo ships that are going through across the country. And so that's the next thing that's going to happen is the United States could just go home and then let the competition come back. And then now you got more naval warfare and competition over trade routes. So
this is what I think. I want to wrap this up right now on my point is that I think the United States needs to do a reformation of its empire. We need to wake up and smell the coffee. We, with our affinity for money and to make more, you know, an easy buck, we shipped all of our manufacturing because it's going to be cheaper. So we went to China. We made China powerful. We gave them the tools.
Exactly.
We fucked ourselves. So let me just say this. We need the next president that comes in needs to get serious on this and go above these corporations and say, look, it's your American duty to make these products in the United States, and it's going to be more expensive. But you sell the product, this phone will be sold for more money, and they'll make more money in their pocket. People will buy this shit. They'll buy it. If they know it's made in America, it has an American flag stamp on the back, it's a pride thing, it's a patriot thing, and people will buy it. It's going to be more money for these companies. You're hiring American workers to do the job. You are building economic wealth. You're rebuilding communities, the manufacturing zone, the Rust Belt. Reopen these manufacturing plants. Bring back the manufacturing to America. Stop being involved with globalism. Start worrying about yourself and rebuild your country.
Yeah.
Globalism is not a good thing. I'm a populist. I believe in America First agenda. Yep. We need to start doing stuff for ourselves, but yet we can still patrol the affairs of the world. And when we need to engage, we engage. But we have to reform ourselves as a superpower, and we have to get more serious because our adversary, China, is doing the biggest military buildup in the history of the world right now. They are trying to become the world's #1 superpower, and if we don't shape up, we will become number 2, number 3. We are going to get fucked so hard sideways that we knew about this, but we didn't act on it. We need to rebuild our empire and reform many things in order to combat these enemies that are literally, you know, in front of us.
Yeah. And so I'll finish
Please do.
Off this with a little bit of statistics. So
thank you.
The BRICS Agreement has, the 5 nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Together, they combine 26.7% of the world's landmass, but they also make up 41.5% of the world's population. So a bit less than half of the world's population is now in the BRICS Agreement. But I'm not too worried about it because this is a financial agreement. It is them cutting out the dollar, trying to make trade easier back between them all, which is fine. That's good. That's their prerogative. It's our own fault that the US dollar is so weak and terrible. We need to accept that and realize that we need to shape up with how we're doing finances and handling it in the United States. I do not see them backing each other militarily. I don't think India and China have the same interests as far as military.
They don't like each other. This was just a friendship of convenience.
Exactly. A friendship of convenience. I like that. The strategic partnership, as Russia and China have called it, between the two of them. And that's not an alliance. Those aren't friends. They are culturally divided. They've never liked each other. They do not, they're interests are only opportunistic, you know. And when shit starts hitting the fan, people are going to come crawling back to the United States asking for protection,
And we shouldn't give them the hand back. No.
I don't know.
You do this one time, that's it. It's done.
Yeah,
it's finished.
We'll see how it goes. And then I don't think the United States has to do anything else than secure our home front, rebuild our infrastructure, start manufacturing here, and start opening back up the shale fields and becoming a net energy exporter instead of an importer.
To that point, these are the points that we need to do as a country to become strong again. We're a strong nation, but we have a lot of problems. Number one, we need to bring back the manufacturing to America. We create wealth that way, we create jobs that way, and it's more of a patriot pride thing, and I like that. Number two, we need to continue investing in our military, and we should even maybe consider a 2-year mandatory service rule for every man and woman in this country now that we have so many conflicts abroad and we are on the cusp of an official third world war. Number three, we need to get serious about our national debt because our national debt will become our death, and it's already happening right underneath our nose. The fourth thing is any country that is literally going against us, we need to have them as an adversary and we need to punish them through economic sanctions and through the banning of real estate investments, as well as the travel and visa situation. It's cut. It's gone. You're done. The other thing is we as a country have to invest in our infrastructure. As you said, we have our infrastructure is decaying from within. We need to reform our education system from head to toe so we can combat these other countries that are gaining advantages in those fields. But our infrastructure needs to be top tier. We need to create jobs that way. We will clean up our infrastructure, and we need to, our railway systems have to be rebuilt, our dams, our canals, our buildings, our bridges. We need to have top tier amenities in this country. We are falling apart from within.
Precisely. And so I think it's just we're in agreement. America first, rebuild what we can here, get our finances in order. And then if we can help other parts of the world, you know, that's
we
great.
will. And we're not going to be, what's the term? I'm trying to come up with a term, Cowboy. Help me here.
Isolationist?
I don't want to be isolationist to the point where we have to basically bail a bunch of countries out because we let a couple countries get powerful. We have to be watching, but at the same time, let's bring this stuff back to America. We don't need to be sending all of our shit overseas. Start bringing the shit back here.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I agree. And so, backing our allies and everything like that. So any last statements?
That's it, folks. That is it from me. But I will say, watch out for China. They're coming after us. Watch out for China. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thanks, y'all. It's been the Persian and the Cowboy podcast. Thank you so much. He's the Persian. I'm the Cowboy. And cheers. Have a great day.